our bodies, our spirits, our minds, they know how to heal. Sometimes it's just about giving ourselves the space to allow the healing to come through.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Alchemie Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Davis. The Alchemie Podcast explores a happier and healthier future for all. Featuring conversations with thought leaders, scientists, and change makers, we'll explore topics at the intersection of individual wellness, social equity, and sustainability. Join us as we look to bridge the gap between personal, community, and planetary well-being. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome to the Alchemie Podcast. I'm so excited to have a dear, dear friend of mine here with us today, Dani. Dani is a mindful movement instructor and community leader on a mission to reshape the way we cultivate personal and collective well-being. After years of pushing her body to its physical limit, a severe spinal injury forced Dani to slow down and explore a deeper journey of healing. Through her profound experience diving deeper into somatic movement, mindfulness, and breath work, Dani not only healed physically, but also reconnected with a sense of inner vitality that she never tapped into before. Passionate about sharing this feeling with the world, Dani developed her signature mindful movement practice, Come Alive, in 2017. And after growing a dedicated following, she then founded Alive with Dani in 2020, a community space designed to explore movement, mindfulness, self-study, and shared stories as we walk the path of embodying aliveness together. Hi, Dani. I'm so excited that you're here today. Beyond thrilled, just because I know it's going to be an amazing conversation for us just to chit chat for the next 30 minutes or so.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm honored and so excited to be here.
Well, I ask every guest to start with a little bit of that personal introduction because I think you can learn so much about someone by how they share their story, what's important. So I'd love to start there. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how your path led you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my parents taught me that I was dancing and moving my body in that way before I even started walking. So I've always had this deep love for moving my body, and that kind of carried with me throughout childhood and through getting pretty deep into the ballet world. And I started in a professional ballet program when I was around 12. And when I was 14, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. And not only kind of an S-curve pattern that was severe enough to need a back brace, but they also told me that if it got worse as I continued to grow, that I may need to have surgery to have rods fused to my spine. And it was a really kind of formative moment for me where it was the first time I really felt like I was in my body in a way where I didn't trust it. And I felt almost betrayed by my body. And that kind of carried with me through the rest of my high school experience. It really shifted my experience of being in my body as I progressed in my ballet career, from just loving the experience and the art of embodiment to needing to control and being so scared of my body being out of control that I felt like I constantly needed to fix it and be perfect and strive for perfectionism. And in some ways, it was really beneficial. It made me extremely disciplined. It really served me in college when I started studying both dance and neuroscience because I was so fascinated by the connection between the brain and body and how my body ended up in this twisted, curvy way that it did. But it also was a big challenge. It was probably my biggest Achilles heel as well. So I carried that with me. I studied neuroscience and dance in college, wanted to go to med school. Eventually, after a long, twisted path, realized med school wasn't really the path for me and ended up in California working at 23andMe, which felt like a nice balance of my neuroscience and interest in medicine and genetics and also kind of helping people heal. And alongside that, started teaching yoga, fitness, all different kinds of movement practices. Shortly after, I ended up leaving my job after a couple of years to teach full time. And that really deep desire to control and that underlying need for perfectionism kind of overtook me during that time and led me to teaching 20 to 25 classes a week, just pushing my body to its absolute limit to just prove to myself that I could do this, that I could be successful, and to be the best teacher I thought I could be. And in doing so, pretty severely injured my spine, blowing out the disc between my L5-S1, had really bad sciatica down my whole left leg and left side, and could barely do my job full-time teaching at that point anyways. So that was kind of an interesting point in my journey where I thought I was following my purpose and my gift in this way of helping people feel strong and empowered through movement in their bodies, helping people heal through embodiment and movement. And I couldn't even move in my body in a way that felt remotely healing or good in any way. So that kind of shifted my path and my understanding in a lot of ways. It caused me to pause and really ask myself some deeper questions around my purpose. Like, what really is movement and embodiment and healing? And what does it mean to teach people to be in their bodies? And what does it mean to inhabit my own body in a way that was compassionate and present and deep listening and being a steward of my own healing journey through my body? So during that time, I started working with a somatic movement healer. I started studying under various teachers like T.S. Little. Stephanie Snyder was one of my main yoga teachers at the time in San Francisco. Started studying restorative yoga, different meditation practices, and really understanding more of the inner working since I couldn't physically move my body very well, really understanding what it meant to be in a body when intense physical movement wasn't the primary focus. And in doing so, I shed and uncovered so many different layers that helped heal my own spine in 6 months instead of a year and a half, which the doctors were projecting. And it also helped me come into a deeper understanding of this inner sense of vitality that gave me so much more fulfillment and a sense of aliveness that I'd never felt before than running 12.0 on a treadmill or then pushing my body to its absolute limit in a weight class, which no knock on those things. Those are still really fun and exhilarating, but it wasn't what was making me feel most alive. So it just shifted my whole understanding and brought me into my deeper purpose of helping people find that sense of inner vitality, of aliveness, of their own connection to who they were through movement in a totally new way. It's what led me to create my mindful movement practice Come Alive, what led me to build a whole community around it, and yeah, what led me to what I do today.
Oh, love that. Yeah. And it's just so fun to hear you say all of these things because I know you and I have known each other for a number of years. And I mean, I kind of had an idea of some of this stuff, but just all the journey that you've been through in the past decade is really beautiful and incredible. So I'm really excited to get into it further. But I think one of the first questions that I wanted to dive into was really about the impetus of Come Alive. You know, what drew you to start it? How did that process really begin for you?
Yeah. The Come Alive practice came at kind of that trajectory point in my path when I injured my spine. It was actually born out of a place of feeling probably the most broken and depressed and down and just purposeless that I've ever felt. I'd spent so many years building up this sense of purpose around being a really strong physically individual and being able to persevere and push through pain and teaching people how to feel that strength in their bodies in a very almost kind of hardened way, which is so kind of culturally normative at this point. But yeah, it wasn't until I kind of hit rock bottom that I got all the way to the point where I was so out of tune with my body that I pushed myself so hard, I completely blew out a disc in my low back and could barely move, let alone teach when that was my full-time job, that I was forced to really dig deep into understanding like what's going on here. What really is my purpose if not just teaching people how to move their bodies, if not just teaching people how to reach that endorphin high, things like that. So through my own healing process, through a willingness to get really vulnerable with myself first and getting really honest with myself, like, yeah, I know that I'm a good movement teacher, but what does that really mean at the end of the day for me? Like, where do my gifts really lie in that? And maybe it's not being the best movement teacher and being able to teach the most intricate, strong, intense fitness practice, but maybe it's more so teaching people how to be in their bodies in a way that met them at their edge, but met them also where they are in that moment, meeting themselves where their breath is, where they can stay present in their bodies. They're not leaving their bodies in order to reach a certain movement goal. They're embodied as they move. They're in tune with everything that's happening within them. So that was kind of where the practice started in my own healing journey. And as I started to heal my spine and started to be able to physically move again, I was so impassioned to help other people heal, whether it was from a physical ailment, whether it was from an emotional or mental space, whatever it was, through embodiment, and really teaching people a new way to be in their bodies that was really rooted in presence, that was rooted in connection to the breath, connection to themselves, and see what they could unlock from there. So I started just kind of, as my body healed, moving my body in ways that felt good. I was also taking a ton of different types of practices. I was trying different Pilates practices. I was getting more into different meditative and transformative breathwork practices. I was experiencing other mindful movement practices like the class or Melissa Wood Health, things like that, that I was inspired by. And from there, I started to piece together what resonated in my body, what resonated in my being. So I took my background from teaching everything under the sun, from yoga, Pilates, sculpt, walking, running, fitness classes, the mindfulness and somatic tools that I had built and kind of gotten into my tool belt over that past year and a half or so. And I started to just move my body and create this new movement format, which eventually became Come Alive. And it's funny, the name, everyone always asks me, like, where'd you get that name from? And the name really came, it wasn't really meant to be a long-term kind of formal name for the practice. I started teaching at a space called the Assembly, a beautiful women's community and wellness social club in San Francisco that unfortunately isn't around physically anymore, but was just one of the most transformative spaces that I'd experienced. I brought it to that space when they were opening in 2018, and they were like, okay, what's the name of the class? And I had to quickly think of something. And throughout my whole process of healing my spine, the Marianne Williamson quote, and this may be slightly off, but you'll get the idea. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I had that posted everywhere on my phone, on Post-its everywhere as I was healing my spine. And in the moment they asked me for the name, I was like, it's Come Alive. And I just kind of went with that, planning on changing it. And then as I continued to build the class and really let the class evolve as I evolved, and as people started to experience and build the class with the community, Come Alive felt like the most resonant name for the experience that I could have ever come up with. So that's kind of where it came from. The whole practice is designed to, it moves to the beat of the music. It is kind of that blend of strength and low impact Pilates sculpting with big cathartic, low impact optional cardio release and meditative pauses. And it's designed to help you peel back and strip off the layers, the identities, the masks that are no longer serving you, and help you come back into attunement, into connection with who you are at your core, with that steady, unchanging place inside you that is most alive no matter what you're moving through or what is occurring or you're experiencing around you. So
yes,
that's kind of where that came from.
No, I mean, it's just really cool to hear also how you're incorporating all of these different modalities into this beautiful physical experience, but also that it's touching like the somatic side of things as well as you're going through that class. But I know, which is really exciting, that you're transitioning into this new phase into your life, motherhood. So I'm just curious how your perspective maybe has shifted during this really, new time for you too, about embodying aliveness and what that means to you today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The journey into motherhood and pregnancy has been so invigorating and exciting and terrifying and humbling and eye-opening in so many ways. And I feel like after this podcast comes out, I'm going to have so much more that has come through and I've unpacked. But from what my experience has been so far up until kind of this 8th month of pregnancy, it's been a journey of that stripping back. Like, it feels like everything that I've gone through up until this point has more purpose than ever and has led me to feel comfortable and confident and so in tune and trusting of my body in a way that I don't think I ever would have felt without going through that intense back injury and losing all control of being able to fix something and having to surrender to the pain, having to use the pain as a teacher, to let it be a teacher for me, to slow down, to listen, to really be a good witness of my own experience and trust that my body knows how to heal. And from taking that into creating practices and mindful movement practices and a community built around that idea that our bodies, our spirits, our minds, they know how to heal. Sometimes it's just about giving ourselves the space to allow the healing to come through, that we don't always need to be gripping on in control in order for things to go as they should. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And, I've always been really, to be honest, terrified of giving birth. It's always been something I think that sense of completely being out of control and trusting that's something I've never done before. Maybe the biggest sensations I'll ever feel in my life, the biggest transformative experience I'll ever have in my life from what I hear. I have no reference points for that, but it's teaching me how to keep loosening my grip. Every time I think I've surrendered, the universe keeps telling me, where can you surrender a little more? And this journey of pregnancy has been just that. It's the continuation of stripping back all those layers of trusting that my body has all the wisdom it needs, that my soul knows what to do, that my spirit can hold me through this and hold this baby through this process. And it's also just made me more in tune with my body and my purpose in ways I've never felt before. So yeah, it's been really transformative in that way. And it's also just been like the most awe-inspiring experience of my life. Like to see my body change and grow and move. Like I talk so much in my classes about taking up space.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, I feel my body doing that in a way I've never experienced before. And it's scary. I'm breaking through layers, and you have to strip things off in order to grow, in order to expand your container to be able to hold more. And that's been such a inspiring and just like a revelatory experience for me and understanding my power and my capacity.
I was going to say the way you just said about stripping back layers to create more space for a bigger container, I think it's both physically and emotionally you're doing that in this process, which is really incredible. I mean, it goes back to exactly what your practice, the Come Alive work has been all about, is there's this physicality to the work, but then there's also this like deeper healing that also needs to be done at the same time to create more space. So that's so beautiful. But yeah. I think what's been really cool about watching your journey is how at the core community is for you, which is so beautiful. And I think you've done a great job at cultivating and bringing together community, not only in your Come Alive program, but also just in your life in general. Like you're always surrounded by, really strong community, and it's clearly very important to you, which it's awesome to see. But can you share a little bit more about this value of community to you and give a little bit more wisdom into it to our listeners?
Yeah. I think for me, where my realization that community was such like a critical part of my own healing journey, and also like the key that unlocked everything for me, was it started with that willingness in my back injury to be vulnerable. Like it was so hard for me before then to open up before I had everything figured out, to share the raw, real, messy parts of myself that felt completely imperfect and ugly and just not who I wanted people to see me as. It was so hard until I had gotten past the point of figuring out how I got to the other side to share those parts of me with people. And it wasn't until my back injury where it was like, okay, I can either not make any money, or I can show up to these classes and just verbally cue people through it and also share my heart through teaching without, being able to use my body to teach. That really, it was the first time that people started coming up to me and being like, wow, that was the best class you've ever taught, or holy moly, like that just moved me in a way I didn't realize I needed, or whatever it was. And it started to make me realize, like, not only being vulnerable and honest with myself was a key part of my healing, but being vulnerable in a processed way and open with my community was this other half of the key that I had been missing for so long. And not to say that we should be spilling all of our unprocessed stuff with everyone all the time, but I think it's really important to live and lead in that way. And so from that point on, I started saying this in some of my classes, and now I say it in almost every single class I teach: you have to do the work on your own, but you don't have to do it alone. And I mean that to my core. It's what helped me heal through my own spinal injuries, through every hardship I've ever been through. And it's really become my why for everything that I do. So yeah, I think, community is really the space where it reminds us that our purpose is so much bigger than ourselves. It reminds us of, I think having the mirror of community gives you the opportunity and the reminder of who you are when you forget. Having those people surrounding you and helping you see yourself when you forget. All of that is just so critical to staying on our path, to staying connected to our purpose and to finding the joy in being alive. So for me, that's really come through in teaching. It's come through in how teaching can become so much more than just coming into a class and leaving, but coming into a class, having a heart opening experience, and then sharing that experience with 10, 20, 100 people plus around you, and bringing that into experiences beyond just teaching movement classes and community events, into retreats, into the ways we connect online from, miles apart. It's really become my ethos and my why for everything I do. So that's kind of where community fits in and how it's really played a central role in my own healing journey and the evolution of my purpose, and what I think is required for all of us to really heal and heal our world.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue, because I was thinking a lot about how what you're talking about is we're so disconnected in so many ways, whether it's from ourselves with each other in this digital world, which has so much beauty to it, but also has some, issues with it as well. And how important just having that connection to both self and community ultimately then enables us to have the ability to connect with things bigger than ourselves, like the planet and the environment and everything beyond. And that's really what we're all about here at Alchemie. So how do you see embodying aliveness support this vision that we have around bridging the gap between all three of these things: personal, community, and planetary wellness? We talked about it a little bit already, but I want to hear it more from, your perspective.
Yeah. And I know you and I are so aligned on this, and this is such a big reason for my why and what I do. I really am such a firm believer in that, we can't show up for anything around us if we aren't showing up for ourselves first, right? You can't give anything on an empty tank. At the end of the day, it's really all about this idea of reciprocity and balance, not in a way of needing to constantly have equal balance, but in a way of being in tune with the ebb and flow of where you're giving, where you're receiving. I had that experience through my spinal injury when I was just constantly giving and constantly needing to be in control of everything around me. I was not opening myself up to receive, to slow down long enough to receive, to be in tune in that way, to find that sense of balance. I injured myself so badly I couldn't even do the thing I loved to do anymore. When we're constantly, reaping the benefits and taking from our planet, from this earth, we're seeing the effects through all of the evolution of climate change and everything we're seeing happening, the devastating state of our world. And so I think, it starts with us. It starts with us being willing to slow down long enough to take a really good look inside and understand who we are, why we're here, and to love ourselves enough to want to receive, to want to fill up so we can then show up out in the world and give back in that way. I think, the purpose, it felt for so long, and I know for a lot of people, it can feel selfish to focus on your own healing, to focus on filling up your own cup, to focus on taking care of yourself before taking care of others. But it's really a baseline, a foundational requirement. And so I think the more we can set aside time in our day to, whether it's through meditation, whether it's just through taking out your AirPods or turning off your phone and setting it aside and going for a walk with your dog and just being in nature, appreciating what's around you, just being present, with yourself, with your surroundings, with everything you're grateful for, have in your life, it makes you want to show up and give back even more. So I think in that way, the practices that I offer are really that's like a deeper why in all of it. I think also in the way that we take time for ourselves, we are more inspired and have the capacity to take time and want to give our gifts in the way that only we know how back to the world. And the truth is that what we have to offer, no one else can do the way we could do it. So each and every one of us has a responsibility to take care of ourselves so we can show up and offer those gifts to the world and to our community around us. So that feeling of reciprocity, that understanding of taking care of ourselves so we can take care of the world, and staying in the ebb and flow of that balance through presence and mindful awareness and gratitude. It's just all, I think, so important for bridging that gap between personal, community, and planetary wellness.
Such a good wrap up to this conversation, Dani, because I think you started touching base on it, but there are just even the simple things that people can do, like go out for a walk, to be more present with themselves so that they can listen deeply to what's going on within, so that you can show up more holistically for what's going on outside of yourself too. What are some things, if you were to give the audience here just a handful of ideas on how they can better embody aliveness in their life, what would you say those things could be for them? Just even like one or two would be great.
Yeah. I think that so much of building a practice of presence is starting small, and also it doesn't have to cost any money. Like, your breath is free, and it is such a powerful tool. It's literally our source of vitality, our source of aliveness for every single step we take in this life. So I think just truly, when you wake up in the morning, I love, whether you're a journaler or not, just waking up and even thinking of one thing that you're grateful for, just starting your day off, putting yourself in the mindset of gratitude brings you into a vibrational state that's going to call in something positive for you, regardless of the ups and downs of your day. I think that's a really great practice that I try to stay connected to help ease into my day from a place of gratitude. And then tuning into your breath, like starting your day by just lying down or sitting up in bed. You can place your hands anywhere on the body, on the chest, on the belly, both hands in your lap, wherever is comfortable for you, and just taking 3 to 10 slow, deep inhales through the nose and out through the nose or out through the mouth, and being fully present with your breath, feeling the breath fill up your body, feeling your contact points of the body touching the support beneath you, feeling the air of the room or the outside space on your skin, like just feeling your body in space and being aware of it, being so grateful for just getting to wake up and be alive. It's such a powerful practice, and it's free. It is totally free. So I think, helping yourself firstly in the day when you can, by starting with just a thought or putting your mindset somewhere towards gratitude, connecting to your body and your environment from that place with your breath. And if you can, like giving yourself even 5 to 10 minutes every day, whether it's in the middle of the day when you take a break, whether it's that 10 minutes of scrolling you do on Instagram and you decide to ditch to do 10 minutes of just movement or stretching, or taking yourself on a short walk outside, finding those moments for yourself to connect back in, to get off your devices and remember the gift and the miracle it is that you have this body, that you have this opportunity to live in this moment and give back to the world with these gifts that only you have to offer. I think those are 3 things I really recommend and are simple and free. So
love that. Well, thank you so much, Dani. I feel like there's a lot that our audience here can take away, and I'm beyond excited for you in this next chapter that you're walking into with motherhood. By the time this released, you're probably going to have a babe already. So sending so many positive vibes to you in this next chapter. And we're really excited to follow you along on this journey. So thanks again for coming by. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so, so grateful for this conversation, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Alchemie Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, you can find more about the speaker in our show notes below. In order to build a global community committed to well-being for all, we need your help. So please rate and subscribe to wherever you're listening from. Finally, we could not do this without the help of our amazing team. A huge thank you and shout out to Lindsay Todd, our producer. All right, y'all, have a lovely, lovely day.